Hi, welcome to Luna Listens to Books channel. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe. Now the story begins. My husband was a dancer after we married. He refused to have children, fearing it would hinder his career. So, I took the initiative and underwent sterilization. 10 years later, I received millions in compensation from a demolition project, only to have 3 children suddenly appear, demanding their share. After digging into the truth, I uncovered a devastating reality. They were triplets, the children of my husband and his childhood sweetheart. He had named them Diego, Mateo, and Bruno. And his childhood sweetheart? Eulalie Hemsworth. The money I had sent to my in-laws had been used to buy a spacious apartment in their hometown, not for me, but for him and her. All those years, Hayden Radcliffe had used the excuse of seeking inspiration to shuttle between 2 cities, hiding a life I never knew existed. Under this gut-wrenching revelation, I confronted him, my fury uncontainable. His response? Steady, self-righteous, without a hint of guilt. For the promise I made in childhood. I felt myself unraveling, rage and heartbreak colliding. The argument that followed was a storm neither of us could contain. Relatives and friends surrounded me, their voices a mix of persuasion and thinly veiled pressure. You two were campus sweethearts who made it to marriage. Do you know how many people envy that? What's a few children in the mix? You can't have kids anyway, so why not accept them? All these years, Hayden never looked down on you for being infertile. Now that you have money, wouldn't it be better to have children to care for you in old age? Swallowing the lump in my throat, I turned to Hayden. At nearly 40, he still looked as refined and youthful as ever, as if time had never once betrayed him. Give them some money and send them away. That's the furthest I'm willing to bend. Hayden rose to his feet, his gaze unwavering, his voice chillingly firm. They are my children. They have every right to inherit my assets. If you refuse, then we'll settle this in court. I wiped the blood from my hand with a detached calmness, my last shred of false hope crumbling to dust. Hayden, let's divorce. My husband was a dancer. After we married, he refused to have children, fearing it would hinder his career. So, I took the initiative and underwent sterilization. 10 years later, I received millions in compensation from a demolition project, only to have 3 children suddenly appear, demanding their share. After digging into the truth, I uncovered a devastating reality. They were triplets, the children of my husband and his childhood sweetheart. He had named them Diego, Mateo, and Bruno. And his childhood sweetheart? Eulalie Hemsworth. The money I had sent to my in-laws had been used to buy a spacious apartment in their hometown, not for me, but for him and her. All those years, Hayden Radcliffe had used the excuse of seeking inspiration to shuttle between 2 cities, hiding a life I never knew existed. Under this gut-wrenching revelation, I confronted him, my fury uncontainable. His response? Steady, self-righteous, without a hint of guilt. For the promise I made in childhood. I felt myself unraveling, rage and heartbreak colliding. The argument that followed was a storm neither of us could contain. Relatives and friends surrounded me, their voices a mix of persuasion and thinly veiled pressure. You two were campus sweethearts who made it to marriage. Do you know how many people envy that? What's a few children in the mix? You can't have kids anyway, so why not accept them? All these years, Hayden never looked down on you for being infertile. Now that you have money, wouldn't it be better to have children to care for you in old age? Swallowing the lump in my throat, I turned to Hayden. At nearly 40, he still looked as refined and youthful as ever, as if time had never once betrayed him. Give them some money and send them away. That's the furthest I'm willing to bend. Hayden rose to his feet, his gaze unwavering, his voice chillingly firm. They are my children. They have every right to inherit my assets. If you refuse, then we'll settle this in court. I wiped the blood from my hand with a detached calmness, my last shred of false hope crumbling to dust. Hayden, let's divorce. At that moment, my mother-in-law shot up, her rage igniting like dry wood in a flame. A cup flew toward me, shattering just inches away. You're nothing but a barren hen. How dare you ask for a divorce? If anyone's leaving, it'll be Hayden, not you. What right do you have? Relatives rushed to hold back my raging mother-in-law, each taking turns trying to talk us down. The room buzzed with frantic voices, but none of them spoke for me. Hayden's expression darkened, his sharp gaze locking onto mine. Ella, you want a divorce? What exactly are you trying to pull? The noise around me blurred into a distant hum as I took in the chaos, relatives talking at once, my mother-in-law pointing at me, her voice shrill with curses. A suffocating weight pressed against my chest. This was the man I had once cherished like a rare gem. This was the elder I had once treated like my own mother. And yet, somehow, my husband's betrayal had become my fault. Sensing the shift in my expression, Hayden's tone softened as if a gentler voice could undo the damage he had done. Ella, I know I've wronged you, but I had my reasons. Eulalie and I have been promised each other since childhood. I broke that engagement to marry you. That was already unfair to her. She has been alone all these years. Having children was her dream, so she could have someone to rely on in old age. We've been married for 12 years, Ella. I thought you would understand me and support me. How could you embarrass me like this in front of everyone? He spoke as though he had been backed into a corner, as though I was the one being selfish. His words sent ripples through my heart, unsettling the depths of emotions I had long buried. I closed my eyes. 10 years ago, Hayden had performed a breathtaking traditional dance, his every movement mesmerizing, like a prince stepping out of a dream. In my eyes, he had been perfection. But behind that elegance lay a harsh reality. His mother had already arranged for him to marry Eulalie, binding him to a future he never chose. She had intended to make him a live-in son-in-law, only to squander the dowry on her gambling habits. She had even boasted that Eulalie had promised to buy them a house and take her to the big city, a golden ticket she clung to. When I spoke of marriage to my parents, my father's fury was unrelenting. Foolish girl. Do you want to marry into a rural family? If you step out that door today, I'll burn down the furniture factory and act as if I never had an unfilial daughter like you. His rage should have crushed my resolve, but I pleaded again and again until he finally relented. In the end, he gave my mother-in-law money for a down payment on a small apartment. But it wasn't enough. So I worked. I took on extra jobs, worked overtime in secret, and saved every cent until I finally bought the house in full, bringing her to the city myself. I had thought that love was worth every sacrifice. After we married, Hayden told me he wanted to focus on his career and that he didn't want children. So I took the initiative. I underwent sterilization, leaving no room for debate. To put his mind at ease, I even had the doctor issue a certificate of infertility. Not long after our wedding, both families began pressing us for children. The whispers and pointed gazes followed me everywhere. Enduring the endless gossip, I presented the infertility diagnosis. From that moment, my mother-in-law's demeanor shifted. Her once amiable tone turned sharp, laced with ridicule. She sneered, her words dripping with disdain as if I were neither man nor woman. Again and again, she lamented her son's misfortune, how someone as talented and handsome as Hayden had ended up with a wife who couldn't bear children. Her scorn cut deep, but what hurt more was seeing my own parents push me toward medical treatment as if I were some defective product that needed fixing. One evening, as the weight of their expectations bore down on us, Hayden sighed. Ella, maybe I should just tell them the truth that I want to dance and don't want children. I reached for his hand, holding it tightly, my voice calm yet firm. Hayden, even if your mother accepts it, can you withstand the pressure from my parents? I'm a woman. I can endure their scolding and their criticisms. But can you? Are you ready to sacrifice your dance career for this? His lips parted, but no words came. He fell silent. That day, I spoke softly, my words a quiet promise. You can keep dancing for a few more years. If one day you change your mind and want to be a father, just tell me. I'll have the procedure reversed so we can have a baby. No matter what, I will always support you. In the second year of our marriage, Hayden secured an opportunity for self-funded training. Without a second thought, I took money from the furniture business and sent him off to study in another city. From that day on, his mother changed. She stopped mocking me for being infertile, no longer throwing cruel words like daggers at my heart. Instead, she often returned to her hometown, claiming she preferred the fresh countryside air, that the small apartment I had bought for her felt stifling. I thought she had finally accepted me, that she was giving us space as a couple. In reality, she was in another city, caring for her 3 precious grandchildren. That was when the truth hit me like a slap to the face. Hayden had never gone for training. He had used my money to support his mistress and raise their children. I swallowed the ache in my throat, forcing my voice to stay steady. Hayden, do you really think having children erases your betrayal? Did you ever stop to consider my feelings? Seeing the sorrow in my eyes, a flicker of guilt flashed across Hayden's face. I'm sorry. Yeah. I never wanted you to suffer again. And I didn't want children disrupting our life. Eulalie said that by having these children, she's fulfilled her dream of being a mother. She swore to raise them alone, never remarry, and never interfere in our lives. If you're willing, she even agreed to let them respect you as their godmother one day. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. How considerate of Eulalie. Afraid that I'd have no one to care for me, she selflessly gave birth to 3 sons to fulfill my need for filial piety. Should I get on my knees and thank her? Otherwise, I really might have been left all alone. Hayden smiled indifferently as if the weight of his words meant nothing. There's no need for that. Eulalie may be younger than you, but she's mature and understanding. She knows her situation is complicated, yet she has never once complained. She has devoted herself to raising the children, so I wouldn't have to worry. Now that the kids are older and our financial situation has improved, I think it's time to give her an explanation. We'll set aside $1 million from the demolition compensation reparation for her hardships over the past 10 years. We'll also buy her a 4-bedroom apartment nearby so the children can stay with her. They're used to being with her, after all. His voice remained casual, as if he were making an ordinary business transaction. I'll visit them occasionally, fulfilling my duty as a father. Every word landed like a hammer against my chest. I opened my mouth, but my throat was dry, the words barely forming. Hayden, are you planning to keep 2 households? Don't you think you're being heartless? How do you expect me to face our family and friends? For the first time, hesitation flickered across his face. Ella, I know this isn't fair to you, but haven't you always said you don't care about what others think? That as long as we're happy, nothing else matters? His expression darkened, his gaze locking onto mine. What do you mean now? Are you asking me to be heartless and abandon them? Ella, I'm a father. You don't have children, so you can't possibly understand what that means. I can't just turn my back on them. It's my responsibility. After saying that, he rose to his feet, casting me a silent glance before adding, Ella, I know this is hard for you to accept right now, and that's okay. Just take your time. I still hope you can come to terms with it. After all, they carry my blood. I can't abandon them. With that, he called the relatives and friends outside, leaving me alone on the sofa, slumped in quiet defeat. I reached for a bottle of liquor, leaned back, and drank in silence. Moments later, my phone lit up, a message from the private investigator. Photos and videos loaded onto my screen. A cold chuckle slipped from my lips as I clicked on them. Ever since the truth surfaced, my mother-in-law and the others had stopped pretending. They openly walked in and out of hotels and amusement parks, no longer caring who saw them. The investigator had caught it all. There were photos of the 5 of them dining at a restaurant, of Hayden and Eulalie playing games with the children, of them escorting the kids to extracurricular classes together, like a perfect little family. They were just ordinary family photos, yet my eyes burned as if seared by invisible flames. If my father's spirit could see this from the afterlife, he would have slapped me across the face and called me a fool. But he was gone. He had passed away a year ago from late-stage liver cancer. Before he died, he held my hand tightly, his voice weak yet firm. He told me to live well, not to burden myself with pressure. And that if life became too hard, I could always adopt a child. I thought I had already cried every tear I had to shed. But, staring at that picture-perfect reunion, my vision blurred once more. How could he do this to me after everything I had sacrificed for him? And his mother? How could she? Even when the furniture factory struggled, I never once cut off her monthly allowance of $20,000. She had claimed she needed it for therapy and health supplements, citing anemia and heart problems. At dawn, I called the relocation team. I agreed to invest the compensation funds into the financial management fund. I'll come by later to sign the papers. By the time Hayden returned, I was already drunk, my face streaked with tears. He helped me lie down, his touch laced with guilt, wiping my face gently with a warm towel. The scent of mysterious royal jelly cologne clung to him, turning my stomach. So, he had spent the night with them, and under the roof, I had paid for his mother. Hayden fed me warm water, cradling my head as he whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over, his breath brushing against my hair. For a fleeting moment, it felt like I had gone back 10 years, back to when my father had stood firmly against us, and we were struggling to survive in a damp basement apartment. Life had been cruel back then. My father had severed all financial support, vowing that I would never marry a pretty-faced man with no future. We had survived on cold steamed buns and instant noodles. But back then, Hayden had truly loved me. He never once complained, never wavered, always by my side as we chased down orders, doing whatever it took to get by. And whenever we had something decent to eat, he would always save it for me. I remember a night after one of his performances, someone gave him a chicken drumstick. He had tucked it into his coat pocket, keeping it hidden for an entire day. Then, when night fell, he pulled it out with a grin, holding it up to me. "Eat quickly," he had said, his eyes full of warmth. That night, after I had eaten my fill, he had held me close and wept, blaming himself for dragging me down. His voice trembled as he begged me to leave him behind, to go home and never look back. Now I clung to Hayden, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hayden, let them go, okay? We can still support them financially, but please, don't see them anymore. Please." His entire body tensed. He froze. Reality struck me like a slap. The haze of alcohol lifted. I pushed myself up, stepping away from the bed, my lips curling into a bitter smile as I stared at him. "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why didn't you come to me when you wanted children?" I looked at him, my heart splintering under the weight of betrayal. "Hayden, how could you be so cruel to me?" The pain clawed at my chest, raw and unbearable. My fist slammed against the glass cabinet. The sound of shattering glass filled the room as shards scattered in every direction. A sharp sting shot through my hand, and crimson drops began trailing down my fingers. For days, I buried myself in work, handling the relocation of the furniture factory. That day, just as I concluded negotiations on a merger with Mr. Ashford, my phone rang. It was Hayden. I opened the message without emotion. "Ella, come home tonight. I have something to discuss with you." Knowing this conversation was inevitable, I typed a single-word reply. "Okay." When I pushed open the door, I stopped short, my breath catching. For a moment, I thought I had walked into the wrong house. The crystal chandeliers and wall sconces bathed the room in warm light. An anime played softly in the living room, where 3 little boys laughed between bites of snacks. The dining table was covered with steaming dishes, the air thick with the rich scent of red wine. In the center sat a towering 3-tiered cake, its candles flickering. A bouquet of roses, fresh, vibrant, almost too perfect, rested beside it. Hayden approached with a bright smile, effortlessly taking my bag from my hands. "Ella, you're back. Everything's ready. We were just waiting for you to start dinner." Noticing my frozen expression, he placed a hand on my back, gently guiding me toward the table. "Today is the triplets' birthday. I thought this would be a good chance for you to meet them, to bond with them." His voice was light and casual, as if it were normal, like this wasn't ripping me apart. "So, I arranged a little celebration at home." Then he called out, "Diego, Mateo, Bruno, come meet Aunt Ella. After you greet her later, she'll officially be your godmother." I froze. This wasn't just an introduction, it was a trap. The 3 children barely spared me a glance, their attention fixed on the glowing anime projection. Only after Hayden coaxed them did they reluctantly shuffle over, dragging their feet. I studied them, searching for something, anything, that resembled Hayden. But their round faces, small eyes, and short, chubby figures bore no trace of him. Especially their expressions, impatience, irritability, and complete uninterest. They carried none of the sharp, striking features he had in his youth. The tallest boy eyed me with blatant disdain. "So, you're Ella, you're really ugly, not even close to how pretty my mom is." I barely had time to process the words before he turned, frowning. "Mom, is this really the godmother you found for us?" "I don't want her. She's old and ugly." The other 2 pouted in agreement. "If Big Brother doesn't want her, neither do I. Going out with her would be embarrassing. She dresses so poorly." Hayden immediately covered the boy's mouth, his voice firm but coaxing. "Diego, don't be rude. Have you forgotten what Dad told you? If you call her godmother, she'll buy you big toy cars, a big house, and more toys than you can count." Then he turned to me, his expression calm, too calm. "Ella, since the kids are willing to accept you as their godmother, it's only fair you show some sincerity. I think 3 million per child from the relocation compensation sounds reasonable, plus another million for a 4-bedroom apartment for Eulalie. Money is just an external thing. You don't have children of your own, so sooner or later, it will all go to them anyway. If you win them over now, when you're old, they'll take care of you. I'm doing this for your own good." The tallest boy, clearly the eldest, rolled his eyes before sighing dramatically. "Mom said you don't have kids, and that's just pathetic. We'll barely accept you as our godmother, but don't be stingy. You have to treat us well. Otherwise, when you're old, I'll make you pick up trash and lock you in a dark room to eat leftovers." Hayden nodded approvingly. "My son's got a point. If their godmother treats them well, of course they'll return the favor, right? Don't worry, your godfather has money. Whatever they want, just let me know." As he spoke, he grabbed my arm, his grip firm, his gaze full of unspoken meaning. I sneered and shoved him away. "Who said I wanted to take them as my godsons? Toy cars? Houses? Where's your real mother?" Why isn't she buying them for you? What's the point of dragging an outsider into this? The eldest's face twisted with rage. Without warning, he slammed his head into my stomach, his tiny fists pounding against me. How dare you talk about my mom? You're old and stingy. You deserve to be childless. Asking you to buy us a house was just out of pity. Who'd want an ugly freak like you as a godmother? The other two sprang forward, clawing at my clothes, their voices sharp with childish cruelty. We don't want you here, ugly freak. Get out. Although there were only 10 boys, the strength of the boys was startling. Each punch to my stomach sent sharp waves of pain coursing through me. I gritted my teeth, grabbing their arms in an attempt to pry them off. Yet, they kicked and thrashed with relentless force, their small bodies fueled by unchecked rage. Even Hayden couldn't rein them in. Then a sudden vicious kick struck my knee. A searing pain exploded through my body. Overwhelmed, I instinctively flung the boy away. A loud thud followed by a sharp ouch filled the air. The eldest had crashed headfirst into the coffee table. For a moment there was silence. Then, ear-splitting cries shattered the room. Clutching my knee, I hunched forward, reaching out to help him. Before I could, a shriek rang out from the kitchen. My mother-in-law came rushing in. The moment her eyes landed on her grandson's bleeding forehead, she wailed and threw herself at him, her voice cracking as she sobbed, "My precious baby. My poor, poor baby." Seeing the crimson streak trailing down his forehead, guilt gnawed at me. Just as I parted my lips to speak, another figure emerged from the kitchen. It was my first time seeing Eulalie. She looked just as she did in the videos, graceful and poised, the image of refined elegance from head to toe. Instinctively, I glanced down at myself, factory-issued sportswear, scuffed gray sneakers, and a face worn thin from endless exhaustion and sleepless nights. A bitter taste crept into my throat, spreading through my chest like a slow burn. Eulalie's eyes landed on the blood trickling down her son's forehead. Without hesitation, she gathered him into her arms, her hands trembling as she checked him. "Mom, it was her. She pushed me. She used so much force." The eldest boy cried, his sobs shaking his small frame. Eulalie tightened her hold on him, then turned her gaze on me, cold, sharp, unforgiving. "Sister Ella, how could you lay hands on a child? Just because you've never been a mother and don't understand maternal love doesn't mean you have to be so heartless." Then she turned to Hayden, her voice laced with sorrow. "Brother Hayden, I know your sister has never liked us. That's why, as you wished, I never set foot in Austin City. All I ever wanted was to raise my children properly. I never had any intention of taking you away from anyone. You told me to bring the children here today because she agreed. I was so happy, thinking we could finally be a family. But I never expected her to treat Diego like this." Eulalie's voice trembled with suppressed hurt. "Brother Hayden, I'll take the kids and leave. I won't live under someone else's roof, always walking on eggshells. And I certainly won't let my children be mistreated." Without another word, she picked up Diego, grabbed Mateo and Bruno by the hands, and turned on her heel. Hayden's face paled. Panic surged through him as he lunged forward, desperation laced in his voice. "Eulalie, don't go. I won't let you leave. This is your home, your children's home. Where else would you go?" His voice cracked as he clung to her retreating figure. "I promise, what happened today will never happen again. No one will ever mistreat you again." Then, without warning, he yanked me forward and shoved me in front of Eulalie. "Ella, apologize to Diego right now. Tell him you didn't mean it. Say it." His fingers dug into my arm, his grip tight and unyielding. "And you have to promise Eulalie that you'll treat the children as your own from now on. You must never lay a hand on them again." Every word sliced through me like a blade, sharp and merciless. This house was my father's ancestral home. And yet, Hayden so easily declared it a haven for his mistress and her illegitimate children without a second thought, without a hint of hesitation. And now, he dared to demand that I apologize to a 10-year-old child? That I make promises to his mistress? Something inside me snapped. The urge to argue, to explain myself, vanished. All this time, I had been clinging to an illusion. Lifting my chin, I straightened my back and met their gazes with cold indifference. Then I pointed at the door. "Get out. All of you. This house belongs to my Linton family. Who do you think you are?" The moment the words left my lips, my mother-in-law lunged at me, rage twisting her face. Before I could react, she grabbed a chair and brought it crashing down over my head. "You shameless bitch. How dare you kick us out? You married my son. Everything you have belongs to him. If anyone's leaving, it's you." A blinding pain exploded in my skull. Warm blood trickled down my forehead, blurring my vision. And yet, Hayden did nothing. He simply stood there, watching coldly, like all of this was nothing more than a mess of my own making. I forced myself to stay conscious, gripping my head as I fixed them with a cold, unwavering stare. My father is still watching from above. And yet, you shamelessly let a mistress and her illegitimate children waltz into his home. Do you have no conscience? No dignity? Are you even human? Hayden's expression darkened, his voice dripping with frustration. Ella, why have you become so petty? In the end, isn't this just about money? This house, this wealth, it's our shared property. Shouldn't I have the right to provide for my children? Do you really want to drag this into court? I can't just stand by and watch Eulalie struggle, raising 3 kids on her own. Look at today. She bought a cake, got mom some roses, and spent half the day cooking. Why can't you be more like her? More generous? Think about the bigger picture. A sneer curled on my mother-in-law's lips as she rolled her eyes. I told you from the start, she's nothing like Eulalie. Just look at her now, causing a scene in front of the kids. No sense of shame whatsoever. Mom, that's enough. Ella, just apologize to the child. Take them out, buy something nice, and let's put this behind us. Eulalie was quick to seize the moment. Sensing Hayden's hesitation, she pulled Diego into her arms and spoke with gentle urgency. Brother Hayden, I was just upset earlier because of the child's injury. I didn't mean to speak so harshly. Please don't be mad at sister. I'll apologize to her later. But Diego's wound is still bleeding. We need to get him to the hospital right away. The moment the words left her lips, Hayden and my mother-in-law stiffened. Panic flickered across their faces as they turned their full attention to the child. Sweetheart, does it hurt? Grandma will take you to the hospital right now. Baby, don't be scared. Mommy and Daddy are here. We're going now, okay? They rushed outside in a flurry of linked arms and hushed reassurances, a picture-perfect family bound together in their concern. I stood there, watching them disappear into the night, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. An hour later, my phone chimed with a series of 60-second voice messages. Hayden's irritated voice spilled through the speaker. Ella, what was with your attitude today? It's just a child. You need a little patience. Was there really a need to get physical? I was only trying to do the right thing, but you never appreciate anything I do. Diego is still shaken. I won't be coming home tonight. I'll stay with him and smooth things over for you. Next time, don't be so aggressive. He's too scared to even come downstairs now. Maybe he noticed my silence because his tone softened into a weary sigh. All right, you're hurt too, so I won't nag anymore. Just get some iodine from the cabinet and disinfect your wound. You're an adult. Why do you still get jealous like this? It's embarrassing. Why can't you be even half as gentle and considerate as Eulalie? A cold scoff left my lips as I listened. Without hesitation, I dialed 2 numbers. Secretary Thorne, I want to sell the old house. Contact potential buyers and have a lawyer draft the divorce agreement. Braden, I've made my decision. I'm going to Phoenix to develop the new market. After coaxing Diego to sleep, Hayden found himself unable to rest. For 2 hours, his messages had vanished into silence, with no reply, not even a single word. The memory of the despair in Ella's eyes before he left gnawed at him, unsettling his thoughts. Throwing off the covers, he grabbed his keys and rushed home, anxiety twisting in his chest. On the way, he kept calling, but the only response was the same cold, automated voice. Sorry, the number you dialed is currently on another call. A rare pang of regret settled over him. In his eagerness to have the children accept Ella, had he been too impatient? Had he gone too far, threatening her with court? But the sight of Diego's bleeding forehead came back to him, stirring frustration. How could she lay hands on a child? At her age, she was still so petty, still jealous, still lashing out like this. Why couldn't he just treat his own child as his own flesh and blood? Wouldn't his child still show filial piety to her in the future? Taking a deep breath, Hayden pushed the door open and called out, Ella? Silence. Only the echo of his own voice bounced back at him. His heart pounded as he rushed upstairs, yanking open the wardrobe. The empty space greeted him with a hollow chill. The hanging clothes swayed slightly as if whispering her absence. His gaze flicked upward. The wedding photo was gone. Panic rising, he hurried into the bathroom. The little bunny cup, the pink towel, her makeup. Gone. All of it. For the first time, fear gripped him like a vice. His hands trembled as he frantically redialed her number, but the only answer was a cold, detached voice. Sorry, the number you dialed is currently on another call. An hour later, he sat motionless on the sofa, staring at the divorce agreement on the table. She was serious. She had turned every penny of the demolition compensation into a trust fund, set to be donated annually to orphanages and impoverished areas. A shiver ran through him. True, paralyzing fear seeped into his bones. Hugging his arms tightly, he curled up on the sofa, drowning in the weight of his regret. The last time he had felt fear like this was 18 years ago. Back then, his mother had gambled away everything, down to her last cent. Desperation had driven her to wager even him, selling him off to a 40-year-old bachelor. The man's rough hand had clamped around his fair-skinned arm, fingers digging in with unsettling intent. Hayden hadn't hesitated. With all the strength his small body could muster, he smashed a stool over the man's head. The punishment had been swift. He was locked up, his mother screaming in fury as she searched for another buyer. But word spread fast. No one wanted a boy with a violent streak. Later, Eulalie's mother cleared the gambling debt and took him in, but not out of kindness. He had not been welcomed as a son nor as a guest. He was nothing more than cheap labor. Eulalie had been just a child then, too young to understand. From that day forward, he had carried the weight of two families, plowing fields, weeding, chopping wood, and completing chores for both his own household and theirs. Then came high school, the first spark of warmth in his bleak world. At the freshman welcome party, he had performed a self-taught folk dance, his movements sharp yet fluid. And in the crowd, a pair of bright eyes had locked onto him. Ella had been watching, and from that moment on, she had liked him. She had spent her hard-earned savings to send him to dance lessons, working herself to exhaustion just to cover his tuition and ensure he ate well. Without her, he wouldn't have even known if finishing high school was possible, let alone making it into a dance academy and becoming a professional dancer. She had even turned her back on her own family for him. Just then his phone rang, yanking him from his thoughts. He took a deep breath before answering. "Brother Hayden, Diego is crying about a headache. He's calling for you. Can you come and comfort him? Daddy, I feel sick and dizzy. It's all because of that bad woman who hit me. I want you to hold me while I sleep." Listening to their carefully woven act, regret twisted inside him. For the first time, he resented his own moment of weakness. Eulalie had always been soft-spoken, her voice gentle, her words sweet as honey. She knew how to coax and charm, but that was all she had ever known. Her aunt had spoiled her like a princess, shielding her from hardship. She had never lifted a finger, found every job too exhausting, and earned barely enough to sustain herself. By the time she reached her 20s, her standards had become impossible. No suitor was ever good enough. That day, when he returned to the village, she clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. She lamented that she had failed her mother by not giving her a grandchild. Eulalie's mother even fell to her knees before him, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded. Her voice trembled with desperation, saying her reputation had been ruined because of an old childhood engagement. She begged him, out of gratitude for their past kindness, to give the Hemsworth family an heir. He hesitated. Eulalie's tear-streaked face, her delicate hands grasping his sleeve as she softly called him Brother Hayden, and then her mother collapsing from grief, clouded his judgment for a fleeting moment. And in that moment he agreed. At the time, he had believed that once he fulfilled Eulalie's wish, it would be over. He would never look back. But things slowly unraveled. 3 fair, chubby little children clung to him, their tiny voices calling him daddy with such innocent affection. He told himself it was the last time, yet he kept going back, sharing meals with them, playing games, picking them up from school. Without realizing it, he had woven himself into their lives, and they were into his. He had even considered bringing them to his side, raising them openly, rightfully, as his own. But after a long time, the truth struck him like a thunderbolt. He had been the one in the wrong all along. He had betrayed a love that had been pure and sincere, yet he shamelessly expected someone else to accept the consequences of his mistake. Reality hit hard. When he saw Ella, he would offer her a sincere apology, lay everything on the table, and truly listen to her feelings. If things couldn't be salvaged, he would send the 3 children and Eulalie back to their hometown, provide for them as he should, and sever ties for good. The next morning, just as he stirred awake, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet house. Still groggy, he opened the door, only to find Secretary Thorne standing there with 2 unfamiliar faces. "Brother," Secretary Thorne greeted him casually before leading the couple inside, already discussing prices as if the house were up for sale. A chill ran down his spine. His pulse quickened. "Secretary Thorne, who gave you permission to bring strangers into my home? When did I ever say I was selling this house?" Secretary Thorne remained polite but distant. Brother, this was arranged by President Linton. She instructed me to finalize the sale within 3 days. That's impossible. This is Ella's family home. Why would she sell it? His gaze turned cold as he glared at Secretary Thorne before immediately dialing my number. The moment the call connected, he pressed urgently, Ella, what's going on? Secretary Thorne said you're selling the house. Why all of a sudden? I listened to the desperation in Hayden's voice and responded with unwavering calm. Move out as soon as possible. I've decided to sell the family home. Why? Why are you doing this? Let's talk about it properly. A sneer curled on my lips. I've already signed the divorce papers. I'm going to Phoenix with President Ashford to focus on my career. I won't interfere with your family's happy reunion. With that, I ended the call without hesitation. No matter how many times he called again, I simply put my phone on silent. Meanwhile, Hayden's face darkened. As he lowered his phone, his chest tightened with unease. Lifting his gaze, he suddenly realized Eulalie stood in the living room, the 3 children clinging to her side. Eulalie's expression darkened as she stared at the divorce agreement spread across the table. Brother Hayden, what does Ella mean by this? What right does she have to turn the demolition compensation into a trust fund? That's marital property. You have every right to it. And now she wants to sell the house just like that. What does she take you for? She's clearly trying to force you to abandon your children and become a heartless father. She's just a woman who can't even bear a son, yet she dares to act all high and mighty? If she wants to make things difficult, then take this to court. The divorce is good for us. It means our family can finally be together. Hayden's frown deepened. Eulalie, the demolition compensation was left by her father, and the house is her ancestral home. She has every right to handle it however she wants. How could we take this to court? And she's not infertile. I've told you more than once that she chose not to have children because of me. I was the one who wronged her. Don't say things like that again. Eulalie's expression darkened when she saw Hayden still defending me. Without hesitation, she pulled Diego, Mateo, and Bruno to her side. Brother Hayden, you're just too soft-hearted. Diego and the others are your real family, your own flesh and blood. Ella is nothing but an outsider. Even if you won't think for yourself, at least think about the children's future. What will happen when they grow up? Who's going to buy them cars and houses? Are you really willing to let them struggle alone like I did? Hayden's brows furrowed as he looked at Eulalie in disbelief. She used to say her greatest wish was for the 5 of them to be together, that money and material things never mattered. But now, the first thing she brought up was the demolition compensation and the house. She even wanted him to take this to court. She was asking who would buy the children cars and houses. Back then, she had promised she would never involve him in anything, that she wouldn't disrupt his life. When had everything changed? Just then, Secretary Thorne approached, a smirk playing on his lips. Brother, so this is the so-called good childhood friend you always spoke of? Looks like all she really wants is for you to fight for property, raise her children, and take care of her while she's at it. Clicking his tongue, he shook his head with a smirk. No wonder President Linton wants to sell the old house and leave. Her husband didn't just cheat. He had children with another woman and now expects her to fund his mistress and illegitimate kids. The fact that she didn't stab him shows just how well-mannered she is. Eulalie's face twisted in anger. Who cares about her money? She threw it at Brother Hayden willingly because she was obsessed with him. What does that have to do with me? I provide emotional support and out in the effort. It's only right that Brother Hayden spends money on me. What would a mere secretary like you understand? Secretary Thorne let out a short, sharp laugh. Oh, I see now. So you served Big Brother well, and now he's happy to support you. His amusement vanished in an instant, his eyes turning sharp as he shifted his gaze to Hayden. Big Brother, anyone with eyes can see how deeply President Linton loved you. Don't you feel even the slightest shame? Does your conscience not weigh on you? With that, he spat on the ground and walked away without a second glance. Hayden stood frozen, staring at Eulalie as if seeing her for the first time. Since when had she provided emotional support? What effort had she ever made? Since when did she believe she was entitled to his support? Had everything been a scheme from the very start, a carefully laid trap? His expression darkened, his voice turning cold. Eulalie, we agreed from the beginning that I was only helping you have children to continue your family line and repay Auntie's kindness. You promised I wouldn't have to worry about anything once they were born. So what the hell are you doing now? Eulalie dusted off her clothes, a scornful smirk tugging at her lips. Hayden, let me make this clear. These 3 children are yours and you're responsible for raising them. You should buy them cars and houses. If you don't sue Ella and get that money, I'll dump all 3 kids on you. I won't care anymore. You're 6 years older than me. Haven't I spent the last decade comforting you, taking care of you? Shouldn't you be supporting me? Hayden staggered back as if the air had been knocked from his lungs. He collapsed onto the floor, his gaze locked on her in sheer disbelief. After a long, suffocating silence, his voice came out hoarse, raw. Eulalie, you're a goddamn liar. Hayden was seconds away from lunging at her, but Eulalie sidestepped with ease, a smirk playing on her lips. If you want a peaceful life, sue Ella and get the money, she said coolly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. With that, she strutted out the door, the 3 children trailing behind her. Hayden scoffed, convinced she was bluffing. He never imagined she would actually take the children and move into his mother's cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Without hesitation, she tossed his mother's bedding into the living room, claiming the master bedroom for herself and Diego, while Mateo and Bruno were stuffed into the 2nd bedroom. Her reasoning: she had spent over a decade raising the children, wasn't she entitled to some compensation? She even had the audacity to declare, if you don't agree, let's ask the neighbors. I, a young and beautiful woman, sacrificed 10 years of my life raising illegitimate children and playing the role of a mistress. Shouldn't I be compensated? Hayden's mother was a tough woman, but she still had her pride. Letting the whole neighborhood find out that her son had been supporting a mistress and raising illegitimate children. Absolutely not. Eulalie settled in with the 3 children as if she owned the place. Every day, she lounged around eating, drinking, watching TV, and playing games without a care in the world. The 3 brats ran wild, toppling coat racks, knocking over vases, and turning the house into a war zone. Mealtimes were an even bigger nightmare. One demanded fried chicken, another insisted on ribs, while the 3rd threw a fit over sweet and sour fish. If they didn't get their way, they would slam the table, wail at the top of their lungs, and hurl their utensils across the room. Within a week, the chaos took its toll. Late one night, Hayden's mother collapsed in the bathroom, clutching her chest, her breathing ragged. Eulalie remained unfazed. She didn't bother calling an ambulance until the sun was high in the sky, as if the old woman's suffering was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. By the time she was rushed to the hospital, the doctors wasted no time moving her to the ICU. Though they managed to save her life, the prolonged lack of oxygen left irreversible damage. She lost all feeling from the waist down. The moment Hayden moved out of the old house and rented a place, his life spiraled downhill. He didn't even take his car, his luxury watches, or his designer clothes. Everything was sold to cover his mother's medical bills. By the time she was discharged, his pockets were empty. Not a single cent remained. Seeing that he was of no further use, Eulalie made an even bigger spectacle of herself. She slept through the day, then blasted loud music at night, wailing like a banshee. His mother, still weak from her hospital stay, couldn't bear the torment. She collapsed from the stress, fainting over and over again. Hayden abandoned his dance performances, resigning himself to a life of servitude, waiting hand and foot on his so-called precious children. Eventually, the weight of it all crushed him. He couldn't take another second. He turned to Eulalie, his voice raw with exhaustion. What do you want? If you drive me to my grave, you won't see a single cent. Eulalie didn't even blink. She named her price, $5 million. Eulalie demanded $5 million. She said if he gave her the money, she would take the kids and leave, never bothering him again. After some back and forth, they settled on $3 million. By the time Hayden came looking for me, I was in Portland, overseeing the construction of a new factory. In just half a month, he had become a ghost of his former self. His once polished face was drained of color, his sunken eyes heavy with exhaustion. The man who once prided himself on his refined looks now stood before me, disheveled and desperate. His lips trembled as he stammered, Ella, please. Help me. Eulalie, she's a wretched woman. The moment the words left his mouth, his composure shattered. Tears spilled down his face as he broke into sobs, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I waved the engineer away and regarded him with a cold, impassive gaze. Hayden, we're already divorced. Shouldn't you be running to your good son and dear mother instead of coming to me? He hastily wiped at his tear-streaked face, desperation creeping into his voice. My mom is paralyzed now. You know what kind of person she is. I can't rely on her for anything. Ella, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I never should have sided with them. I never should have hurt you. He clutched my hand, his grip tight with desperation. I finally understand now. You were the only one who truly cared for me, the only one willing to stand by me. Eulalie said she'll take the kids and leave if I give her 3 million. That's all it takes, Ella. Once she's gone, we can start over just like before. Ella, it's just 3 million. You're more than capable. You could earn it back in 5 years at most. I swear I'll make it up to you. I'll treat you right this time. We can have a child and build a good life together. Please, just give me another chance. I let out a slow, mocking laugh and met his gaze, unflinching. So this was what my patience had amounted to, his delusion that forgiveness was given, that I would bend because he had finally come crawling. Had he come to me with this a month ago, I might have been naive enough to think he was just momentarily lost. I might have even considered it. But now, he was nothing more than a pathetic echo of the past. But now, I saw him for what he truly was. His heart had never belonged to me. It had always been with his childhood sweetheart and their children. And yet, just because I once loved him, he thought he could trample on my dignity, discard me like a worn-out spare, and then pick me back up when he had nowhere else to turn. Hayden, just because someone else scammed you and tossed you aside doesn't mean you get to crawl back to me like some pathetic fool. I have no use for a man who's nothing but an ungrateful, heartless dog. His face flushed red, then drained white, then darkened to a sickly blue. His expression twisted with humiliation, his lips parting as if to speak, but nothing came. In the end, he turned and fled, shame written all over his face. But he didn't give up. Every day after that, he showed up at the construction site, bringing me chicken soup and packed meals with ribs and rice. And every single time, I made sure he watched as I dumped them straight into the trash. He stood there awkwardly, shifting his weight, rubbing his hands together, his head hung low, like a beggar hoping for scraps. People were strange creatures when something came easily, they treated it like trash. Only when it slips through their fingers do they realize its worth. But the human heart was fragile, it could not endure being burned and scalded time and time again. Half a month later, Hayden finally gave up and left. I didn't spare him a second glance. We were both adults. He had made his bed. Now he had to lie in it. Still, I arranged for him to receive a monthly allowance of $10,000 from my investment returns. That was the last shred of kindness I had left for him. From then on, he was on his own. Yet, less than 10 days later, court summons landed on my desk. Hayden had actually sued me. I let out a cold laugh. I had no intention of digging up this mess, but since he was so desperate to drag me through the mud, fine. I would rip off the mask and lay every ugly truth bare for the world to see. In the courtroom, Hayden kept his eyes down, avoiding my gaze. Eulalie, on the other hand, sat with her chin lifted high, smug and triumphant. And why wouldn't she be? 3 adorable sons, a man willing to fight for her, and the chance to walk away with millions. Not everyone could pull off a scheme that perfect. Hayden's lawyer argued with fervor, painting him as the devoted husband who had poured his heart into supporting my business, toiling endlessly at home, only for me to dispose of marital assets without his consent. Now he demanded his fair share, half. I hadn't even bothered to hire a lawyer. Calmly, I placed a stack of documents and receipts before the court. During our marriage, I had spent $2 million on his mother, her medical bills, her daily expenses, her vacations. For his own pursuits, dance training, competitions, overseas courses, designer clothing, and endless grooming, he had burned through $68 million. His monthly salary, $13,000. Not a single cent had gone toward household expenses. Where all that money had disappeared to, only he knew. I had even bought his mother a house. Over a decade, I had poured $10 million into his family, nearly $1 million a year. No wonder the furniture business barely scraped by. While I worked tirelessly, Hayden had been coaxing me into shouldering endless expenses, all under the guise of love. Calmly, I presented proof that the furniture factory and the old family home were my premarital assets, inherited from my father, completely unrelated to Hayden. If we were to divide our assets fairly, it was I who should be receiving $5 million in return. The judge meticulously reviewed the documents and statements before proposing a settlement. Hayden turned to me, his eyes filled with shame and desperation. Yeah, I know I was wrong. Please, help me one last time. I'll do anything you ask. I'll be at your beck and call, okay? I met his gaze with cold indifference. No wonder they say that pitiful people often have detestable traits. I had pulled him from the dirt, yet he had willingly crawled back into the mud. I had once loved him, his resilience, his ability to endure hardships, his unrelenting ambition. But I had been blind, underestimating just how deeply his upbringing had shaped him. Selfish, morally bankrupt, insatiably greedy, He was a man without principles, blind to right and wrong. Suddenly, Eulalie shot up from her seat, strutting to his side with an air of arrogance. Giving money to parents is a filial duty. Spending money on a husband is a wife's obligation. Why should she take it back? She sneered. Hayden gave his youth to her for over 10 years. He deserves compensation for that, doesn't he? Even escort men get paid at least $200,000 to $300,000 a year. 10 years, $3 million. That's hardly too much to ask. The judge's face darkened, his patience wearing thin, while murmurs rippled through the courtroom. People exchanged glances, whispering in disbelief, their eaves filled with contempt. Yet Eulalie remained smug, unbothered by the scrutiny. With a twisted sense of entitlement, she went on, spewing nonsense about how I couldn't have children. And how, since she had given birth to Hayden, her children should inherit my assets. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. The judge, the court clerk, even the audience, unable to process the sheer audacity of it all. Shameless people existed, but Eulalie had elevated shamelessness to an art form, parading it like a badge of honor, as if it were something to take pride in. Hayden's face burned crimson, his eyes brimming with unshed tears as he cast a desperate, silent plea my way. I knew the moment was right. Clearing my throat, I projected my voice with clarity. Your Honor, I am officially filing a lawsuit against Eulalie for fraud. She has repeatedly used the children as leverage to extort a total of $4 million from Hayden. I let the weight of my words settle before delivering the final blow. The triplets she speaks of are not, in fact, Hayden's biological children. Their real father is Ozzie Lennox, a street thug. The very air in the courtroom froze. A sharp inhale rippled through the crowd as if no one dared to breathe. With deliberate steps, I moved forward and presented the DNA test results. The truth lay in ink, undeniable, indisputable. The triplets shared no biological link to Hayden. They belonged to Eulalie and Ozzie. I unraveled a story so twisted it bordered on the absurd. Eulalie had struggled to find a suitable partner, drifting in and out of bars in search of something, or someone to hold on to. That was how she crossed paths with Ozzie, a drifter with nothing to his name but a schemer's mind. When Ozzie learned that her childhood fiancé had risen to fame as a celebrated dancer and married into wealth, his mind started turning. An opportunity had fallen right into his lap. He fed Eulalie sweet lies, convincing her to lure Hayden into fathering a child with her. She played her part well, using their shared past to tug at his emotions. But what Hayden didn't know was that the child he believed was he had never even been conceived in the way he thought. Behind his back, Eulalie and Ozzie orchestrated everything. They sought out an underground hospital, arranging for in vitro fertilization. On the very night she was meant to conceive, naturally she instead hacked the embryos implanted, ones that were never Hayden's to begin with. To secure their scheme, they went all in, 3 embryos, 3 children, tripling their leverage. Their plan was as cunning as it was vile sons to carry the name, child support to line their pockets, and one day, when the time was right, a claim to an inheritance that was never theirs to begin with. All they had to do was wait, and when the riches came, they'd sit back and enjoy the spoils. But fate had other plans. The moment I laid eyes on the triplets and then glanced at Eulalie, a seed of suspicion took root. Their features bore no resemblance to either parent, and their conception had been far too convenient. Something wasn't right. So, I hired a sharp-witted private investigator who was charming and persuasive. A few drinks later, the drifter spilled everything without even realizing it. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as I finished my story. The weight of the revelation crushed the air, suffocating everyone in its grasp. This wasn't just deception. It was theft of money, of trust, of an entire future. Swindling someone for wealth was one thing, but playing with their life and their emotions? That was a cruelty beyond measure. Did they even have a shred of humanity left? With a sickening thud, Hayden collapsed. Chaos erupted. Voices clashed, shouts of outrage, accusations flying. The courtroom dissolved into an uproar, forcing the judge to call for an immediate recess. Later, Hayden regained consciousness at the hospital. The doctor confirmed it was extreme emotional distress, but physically he was fine. When he opened his eyes, he didn't speak. He simply stared, empty, hollow. I stood by his bedside, waiting, but he offered nothing. Seeing that he was stable, I turned and walked away. A day later, the news sent shockwaves through the city. In the dead of night, a man broke into a woman's home and, with a single strike, severed her head from her body. Along with her, 3 young boys met the same grim fate. It was reported that after the murders, he locked every door and window, flooded the house with gas, and ignited an explosion that swallowed them whole. In the end, not even their remains were left behind, just ashes drifting in the wind. When I heard the news, I felt nothing. I had given them chances again and again, but greed had no end, and those who fed on deception could only march toward their own destruction. In the end, they went to hell together. A year later, I adopted a little boy, bought a house in Phoenix, and started anew. As business flourished, the past became a distant shadow, one I never turned back to see. Right and wrong were like passing clouds. Perhaps only by sowing kindness could one reap true fortune. Today's story is over. Thank you all for listening.